Hello there, you stunningly attractive human being you. I'm Chris from TechSpert, and today we're going to be checking out the all-new Red Magic 8S Pro, a fresh new gaming smartphone with some rather tasty new tech packed inside. The tagline for this gaming smartphone is "Join the winner's circle," where we'll presumably all tug each other off at our mad PubG skills. But the big whoop of the Red Magic 8S Pro is the brains of the operation, because this beefy bugger is powered by a special overclocked version of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset, which, let's face it, was already pretty tasty to begin with, making this one serious motherfucker. But anyway, enough wibbling on, let's whip it on out the box, take you on a full tour of all the features and really thoroughly test out those gaming chops. So it's a rather unassuming silver box for the Red Magic 8S, nothing extravagant like what you would get with a ROG phone. Does promise you will win more games though, which for me would pretty much just involve winning any games. So first up, what do you actually get stuffed inside of this box besides the Red Magic 8S Pro? Well, first up you get some lovely QR codes to access all of the Red Magic socials. No threads though, well behind the times. You've also got yourself a dinky wee adapter, a lovely red charging cable, and a rather minimalist condom case as well to help keep your Red Magic 8S in good nick. And that's everything you'll find packed inside of this simple silver box. So now let's check out the phone. So let's begin with the design of the Red Magic 8S Pro, and as you can see there, it is an absolute slab. We're talking a proper brick here, not a single curve in sight. It's a 6.8-inch beast. Thankfully those bezels surrounding that display are reasonably skinny. We just changed to a lighter wallpaper so you can see that more clearly. If I can actually find a lighter wallpaper, there we go. So yeah, no fat lip action, no added girth. And the Red Magic 8S Pro reasonably slender, so not too uncomfortable to clutch, despite those hard edges and corners. Just going to change it back to one of the obligatory gaming style desktops. Now the Red Magic 8S Pro certainly got a good heft to it, feels like a solidly constructed device. You've got an aluminium frame, and around back it's yet more metal. You got three designs for the Red Magic 8S Pro: black, silver, or transparent if you want to gawp at all of those saucy innards. Sadly I've just got the regular silver model, but I am loving that brushed metal finish. It's very smart and not too gamey as well. Certainly stands out with those unique aesthetics. It's great to see an all-metal mobile again, used to be all the rage back in the day. However, that shiny surface will need to be regularly polished after every sweaty Genshin session, because it does seem quite susceptible to picking up fingerprints and scuffy, oily, greasy marks. And yes, you do have an obligatory bit of RGB shenanigans going on the Red Magic 8S Pro, but again, it's very subtle compared with a lot of other gaming smartphones. Unless you're sat in a dark room, you'll probably barely even notice the fact that you've got those lights working their magic inside of the vent. And these little bits of text on the back end can also light up, as you can see there, just about visible over the shiny reflections. And as well as that sturdy metal chassis, you've also got Gorilla Glass 5 protecting the display here on the Red Magic 8S Pro. Sadly no IP rating for water and dust resistance though, as to be expected, because it's got flippin' massive open ducts all over the thing. So now let's have a shufty at the software, and what you've got running on this thing is Android 13 with a lovely dollop of Red Magic 8 OS slapped on top. And thankfully the Red Magic launcher doesn't bugger about with stock Androids too much, so you've still got your apps tray there to hide away all your various bits. You've got the Google Discover feed, and naturally you can drag down that notifications bar from anywhere with all of your quick toggles. You will probably notice some changes to the general aesthetics of Android, however, especially when it comes to the app icons, some of which have been highly gamified. You've also got some special Red Magic gaming widgets you can slap on your desktops to change up the refresh rate, otherwise you can quickly activate that cooling fan and change the cooling mode. And if you fancy it, you can basically customize every element of the Red Magic 8S Pro UI, including the animations, the wallpapers, the icons, that flashy glowy light strip, which, as you can see there, you can actually use as a notifications light. I mean, you can even change the sound effect when the fan starts up. Now they are all proper crotch thruster, nipple tweaking, testosterone loaded efforts. Or you could alternatively add your own sound. Bit obvious. Anyway, when you want to get a bit of gaming on the go, well, it's time to flick that red switch and get the game space loaded. I always hold it upside down. And the game space is exactly what it sounds like. It's a hub for all of your gaming shenanigans. You can quick load any of your downloaded titles or jump into the gaming settings. In here you can not only see how much of your life you've piddled away playing these games, you can also change up pretty much any settings you require, right down to the ruddy wallpaper. But don't worry so much about that, because you can tweak the settings when you're actually playing a game, as I'll show you in a second. And inside the game space you can also have a bit of a play around with Mora. She's kind of like Red Magic's anime mascot. I did do a full hands-on with Mora in a previous video. Not hands-on, that sounds all kinds of wrong. But for instance, you can take pretend photographs with Mora, get her to do all kinds of different poses for you. That's one of my favourites. You can even have her do weird shit like stand on her head, if that's what really braises your beef. Check out the hair as well, anti-grav, very clever. Now you could even have Mora wish you a happy birthday on the big day. And frankly, the thought of having to have a pretend lady wish you a happy birthday just makes me very sad indeed. So instead, let's jump on into a game of Genshin Impact. Now when you're in the game, you can drag out the Red Magic game toolbar at any point just by swiping like so. And as you can see, pretty dense with all kinds of different features. You got all the standard fare like notifications blocking, which is particularly handy. You can boost the screen brightness if you want to. You can check out how the likes of the CPU and the GPU are handling things. And yes, you can also record the action if you want to show off your mad skills at a later date. And don't forget to scroll down as well, because there's even more stuff hidden away under there. And you can also toggle the performance modes as well, so I'd stick it into Rise for the likes of Genshin Impact. So that's basically the ultra beefy, whoa yeah kind of mode. Regular stuff you can just stick it on balance, and if you're playing something very simple like Wordle, then yeah, just chuck it on eco. And one of the other handy settings that you'll find tucked away in here is the haptics triggers. First of all, you'll have to actually activate these, and then just drag and drop the icons to exactly which on-screen buttons you want to map the triggers to. You've got various other options as well besides just single tap. And now, as you can see, a quick tap of that left shoulder button and I'll perform my special attack, and then just a tap of that right shoulder button and I perform a normal attack. Those shoulder triggers have a 520Hz response rate and they work perfectly well. A quick tap and you'll instantly be spraying someone's spinal column across the nearest surface. You get some general system haptic feedback when you tap those triggers, and the haptics in general are pretty good with supported games. And that screen is just as responsive, even more so in fact, 960Hz touch sampling, and you can manually tweak the sensitivity in those game settings. Now speaking of that display, it's a 6.8-inch AMOLED panel and it's an absolute cracker. It's a 20:9 aspect ratio, pretty standard for a gaming smartphone, and a 2480 by 1116 pixel resolution. So even though it's bloody massive, the visuals stay nice and sharp. And it is a full view display as well, no notch or camera orifice to get in the way of the action when you are Genshining, if that's a verb, don't think it is. And just as with the previous generation, they've accomplished this by squirreling away the selfie cam underneath the display. And they really have done an incredible job here, because you've got to boost that brightness all the way up and then squint pretty hard in order to see it. It's kind of like one of those classic magic eye paintings. You've got to stare at it for a good long while and then you're like, can I see it? Am I seeing something here, or is it just my brain being broken? It's ever so slightly more noticeable if you come at it from an angle like this, which of course you wouldn't be when you were gaming anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I certainly didn't notice it when I was gaming, or even just kicking back with some Netflix or whatever. And the rest of this screen is just as great. It's bright, it's poppy. No worries if you want to get gaming outdoors, as long as you're not creeping around in subterranean tunnels or anything. If you've got the sun beaming on that screen and you're playing quite murky fare, then it can be tricky to see what is going on. And this panel also tops off at 120Hz, so not quite as fast as some rivals like the ROG Phone 7 Ultimate, which can hit 165, but to my withered old eyeballs, this will certainly do the job. It's nice and creamy smooth. So yeah, your peoples will be happy, and your lugs reasonably so as well. You've got a pair of stereo speakers here on the Red Magic 8S Pro with full DTS-X Ultra support. Ramp up that volume and you get some pretty beefy, powerful audio, although their clarity isn't fantastic. You get a reasonably stereo speaker experience, even though the speakers aren't actually blasting directly at your face. But if you're serious about getting a really good stereo effect in order to survive that little bit longer in Call of Duty or whatever, you've got options. You've got an enhanced headphone jack up top here. Not particularly sure what's so enhanced about it. It seems to work like every other headphone jack I've ever used. And you've also got Bluetooth 5.3 wireless streaming support as well, which did the job perfectly for headphones or speakers if you want to go that route. Now, while the original Red Magic 8 Pro and quite a lot of the other best gaming smartphones of 2023 were powered by Qualcomm's beefy Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset, Well, Nubia's saying f*** all that wimpy bollocks, and it's stuffed inside of the Red Magic 8S Pro what it is terming the lead-in version of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. And what it actually is just an overclocked version of the original 8 Gen 2, very similar to what Samsung stuffed inside of its Galaxy S23 blowers. In fact, it's suspiciously similar to that S23 chipset because apparently the clock speed for the Prime core has been boosted from 3.2 to 3.36 GHz. While the Adreno GPU has also been given a bit of a boot up the arse. And my review model packs in a rather almighty 16 gigs of RAM, although the base model of the Red Magic 8S Pro has a mere 12. Pah! And the Geekbench scores say it all. The 1731 single core score isn't too thrilling, but the 5712 multi-core score absolutely smashes what I've seen from other 8 Gen 2 phones. And yes, that includes Samsung's similarly overclocked S23 blowers, which strangely enough don't seem to perform any better than a lot of other Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 handsets. And so, all things considered, it's perhaps extremely unsurprising that the Red Magic 8S Pro absolutely bossed those gaming tests. I maxed out all of the graphics settings on Genshin Impact, and even so I experienced a beautifully stable frame rate throughout. Not a single stumble from this almighty bugger. And that is of course with the performance mode set to maximum within those gaming settings. Of course, all of that raw throbbing power wouldn't be much use if the Red Magic 8S Pro got hotter than the insides of a freshly microwaved Ginster's pasty when you actually did any bloody gaming on it. But thankfully Nubia has upgraded the cooling system here to ICE 12.0. And yes, every time I mention the cooling system, I do get vanilla frickin' ice stuck in my head. An ICE 12.0 boasts a fresh new duct structure and a graphene layer hidden away underneath the display to help keep the phone cooler when the phone is charging. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same system as before, with an internal fan that can hit 20,000 RPM, complete with input and output vents. Plus you got yourself a massive vapor chamber, copper shenanigans, etc, etc. And yeah, the back end of the phone does still get slightly warm when you boost those Genshin graphics settings to the maximum levels and play for a good hour or two. But we're talking just ever so slightly toasty, certainly nothing that's going to trouble the performance, cause any throttling. And that fan is pretty bloody quiet as well. You can only really notice it when there's no ambient noise and you turn the volume of the phone all the way down. Let's turn the phone on the maximum level and demonstrate. I'll hold it up to the mic. It is whisper quiet compared with some of the fan action I've heard in gaming phones from back in the day. The only time I can picture this ever disturbing anyone is if you're lying in bed next to a very light sleeper, you're doing a bit of gaming and they're just like, what is that white noise in the background? Now, battery life, and just like the previous model, the Red Magic 8S Pro sports a massive 6000 mAh capacity battery. And the good news is, if you've got an afternoon to kill with non-stop Genshin Impact action, even on the maximum performance settings, you'll get around 4 to 5 hours of continuous play before a fully charged Red Magic 8S Pro finally falls on its arse. So very similar to what I saw from the Red Magic 8 Pro, and of course if you want to play something that's not quite as intensive like Call of Duty or PubG, you'll get hours and hours of extra gameplay, no worries. I wouldn't recommend charging the Red Magic 8S Pro while you are trying to play something like Genshin, although with the likes of Call of Duty or PubG again it wouldn't be quite so bad because you don't need it on the maxed out performance setting. Unfortunately, however, it is a bottom mounted USB port. There's no edge mounted USB charging like there is on something like the ROG phone. So if you're going to be charging and gaming at the same time, you'll have to kind of awkwardly position your hands so that cable can stick out. And if you want some more specs, well, I've got some more specs for you. How's this for some specs? You've got 256 gigs or 512 gigs of UFS 4.0 storage, not expandable via micro SD, sadly. You've only got space for a couple of SIMs in that SIM tray. As for the camera tech, well, you've got a triple lens setup headed up as before by a 50 meg Samsung GN5 sensor. Camera app is exactly as before. You get a full on pro mode if you do want to tinker around with the settings, shoot in RAW format. Otherwise you've got the usual AI shenanigans, and a couple of bonus camera modes as well. A night mode which takes a long exposure shot, and a bit of portrait action so you can blur the background, nice and spicy. And if we jump on into the video mode, you see you can record at up to 8K resolution. That's thanks to that brilliant Snapdragon chipset. And then finally if we flip around to the front, you've got that in-display selfie cam. So if you are a selfie fan, I'd say one of the downfalls of this technology is it doesn't take the best looking snaps in the world. Like clarity is a bit hazy to say the least.
And likewise, don't expect the sharpest picture in the world when shooting video using that selfie cam. It does top off at full HD resolution and everything. Does kind of look a bit murky and stuff, which is probably just as well when you're shooting my face.
And anyhow, that in a lovely wee nutshell is the Red Magic 8S Pro, an absolute powerhouse and ideal for gaming all afternoon long, even if you're a bit of a Genshin addict. Some very impressive tech, very few compromises indeed, apart from, of course, the cameras aren't exactly brilliant, but then let's face it, nobody's buying this thing for the cameras, you're buying it because it's an absolute brick house. And more affordable than the likes of the ROG phone. But it'd be great to hear your thoughts on the Red Magic 8S Pro down in the comments below. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. And have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.